We're currently spending approximately $80 billion to build a high-speed passenger train between San Francisco and Los Angeles. I'm curious about the cost of a Hyperloop, and do you think that the high-speed train might be obsolete when you're comparing it to the Hyperloop that you're talking about? Thank you.
So the cost of creating a Hyperloop for passenger systems that we've been working on and designing that would have a couple of differences and would be cheaper. We've been working with KPMG and other very well-known accounting firms to validate our cost structure, which requires smaller right-of-ways, smaller land acquisition. Clearly, because we would probably build a high-speed rail system off the ground, we have a much lower environmental impact. We disturb only a portion of the land rather than all of it to create a very smooth and wide track. We'd probably be about 60% based on today's cost structures, 3 times the speed of high-speed rail. We'd be very energy efficient because we only use a proportion of the tube is actually electrified. Only a proportion of it requires the movement and application of energy. It's not the first project that we would take on, to be very transparent.
What would it be?
A California high-speed rail system from somewhere in Southern California to somewhere in Northern California. I think we're looking to take on demonstrator routes that would perhaps solve the problems of time. And it's really funny, distance isn't the big issue. It's time. And every time we talk about traffic in Los Angeles, how long did it take you to? It's not distance. It's 16 miles from my office to Santa Monica. And it all depends on when I leave as to how long it takes. It's not the distance, it's time. So the problems that we solve are time, not just distance. And from a reality perspective, I think the first projects we should take on would be less complex, less expensive, easier to demonstrate in the short term than a massive project that currently has a budget of $80 billion.
What's the smallest distance you could go and make this?
It's all about time. So 30 miles, 40 miles. The distance, I think, from the ports to the rail yards is 28 miles. The distance from some other ports we're looking at to their potential inland port is 50 miles. The distance between 2 airports that could be connected. And we've actually heard about airport connections and how jammed LAX is. So is London Heathrow. And people talk about building a new runway, which is a great big deal. If you could make another airport that exists today part of the virtual terminals, and you only go 30 or 40 miles, but you go real straight, real fast, it's just like taking a train in O'Hare between the terminals. It would take minutes to move 80 or 90 miles between Gatwick and Heathrow and Stansted, and you could create a virtual airport that isn't a large distance but actually feels like it's one location. So it all depends on time. Cross-city travel takes hours sometimes. And there's one big concept here that we haven't actually talked about, and it's very important relative to how inclusive we can be with Hyperloop and how many places we can stop. If you take something going fast and it keeps stopping, it eventually goes slow. If you take something really fast and you never stop, it's not very inclusive, and you don't get a lot of community support because you didn't stop at my town. You didn't stop in the middle. And the problem with high-speed systems today is they start and stop, so you never really get the benefits of high speed. Hyperloop is different. The pod only goes to where your destination is. Think of an elevator in a high-speed tower where you push 63 and you only go to 63. And the doors open and you're at that new location. So the basic construct of Hyperloop is we don't send 1,000 people at once in a train. We send 50. We don't send a long train formed with containers. We send 1 or 2. And then those containers can go directly to the destination that they're targeted for. So the actual idea that we're packetizing the transportation construct at very high speeds allows us to have more endpoints, more stations, without stopping all the time. And the stations are very much smaller than you need for a big train. Anybody here from the rail business would know that Trains need platforms. And the bigger the platform, the more real estate you need. When we go to airports today, we go to shopping centers because we have to have something to do while we're waiting for our plane or it got delayed. So we have massive shopping centers. Ours would be more like a metro stop where your Uber car, your driverless car picks you up and you have an end-to-end transportation experience. So the answer to your question is I think there's a possibility for us to augment what's happening in high-speed rail, but right now it's not the first project that I think that our company should take on.